And today, in this particular session, we're going to focus on 3 concepts that help us organize information, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just going to name them. I'm going to say a little bit about them, and then we're going to start exploring them and coming up with some examples of each one. Mm-hmm. So the first one, or they don't come in any order, but one is inert information. So one type of information that we have in our minds is an inert information. Mm-hmm. It's information we're carrying around, but that is not doing us really any good, so to speak. We're not acting upon it in any way. Yeah. So that's one type, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. Then we have activated ignorance, another type of information. So activated ignorance means that we are acting upon information that is inaccurate. But of course, we believe it is accurate. So we're acting upon this information. Then we have activated knowledge. And this is what we want to achieve. And this is what critical thinking helps us achieve. Activated knowledge means that we are acting upon information that is accurate. And not only that is accurate, but is also very useful in context. So the activated knowledge gives us power in a situation, so to speak. So let's go back then to inert information, and then we're going to burrow in briefly to each one of these, and again see if we can come up with some examples. So let's talk about then inert information, which is again information we're just carrying around in our heads that we're not using. Gerald, would you like to comment on that?
Sure, I can give a few examples. There's this thing that happens in elementary, middle, and high school, and that to a lot of people, and that many teachers are teaching you stuff that they kind of justify by saying, oh, later on in your life, you're going to see how valuable it was to learn trigonometry or algebra or how to diagram sentences. And many times it's not true that those will help you. I often ask teachers at workshop or higher education instructors at workshops, okay, so those of you who are not in a math related field, how many of you could understand what a quadratic equation is? And virtually no one raises their hand, right? And so I can say, well, if I ask you now, when would you use a quadratic equation? There's absolutely no hand going up. And I say, even if you can give the formula for a quadratic equation, you can write out what the equation means, it still doesn't help you. You don't have any idea what to do with it. And yet, algebra teachers and trigonometry teachers, maybe with some truth in it, say this is very helpful. It gives you a quantitative sense of the world and helps you reason through mathematical problems. And there may be truth in that, but my feeling is that it's a very far removed truth. I don't want to be picking on math here because it goes all the way through many fields. I can say, here's something I learned. I'm embarrassed to say it. In elementary school or middle school, I learned the prepositions. So I'm going to tell you the prepositions now. About, above, across, after, against, among, around, at, before, beside, between, by, down to, except for, from, into, of, off, on, over, through, to, toward, under, up, with. Now I want you to get the feeling that this has been...
We're duly impressed.
Cluttering up my brain so the last 6 years. I mean, it's in there. It's ineradicable, taking up space from other things that I could know, and it's of no use whatsoever. It's not as if I find a word in a sentence, and I say, I wonder if it's a preposition. Let me consult my list. I mean, I would never do that. English doesn't work that way. It just seems it's inert knowledge. It's knowledge that kind of by its nature could not do me any good. And I don't want to stress the by its nature, because I'm imagining certain linguists might find value in being able to list the prepositions. And certainly there's value in trigonometry and algebra. And I've used both of them. But a good deal of what we learn in school is inert knowledge. And I can also say it could be inert knowledge for various reasons. That is, it could have a very great use, but I just never happened to have a chance to use it in that way, right? I might learn accounting principles, but have no relationship to accounting whatsoever. So it's not the fault of the content all the time, or maybe even very often. It can be the fault of, or the result of, many other circumstances in life. But yeah, so those are some examples I have, and Trivial Pursuit is a good example of inert knowledge, right? Playing Trivial Pursuit, where you have this arcane set of facts, or you could win on quiz shows. But if you happen not to have been called to a quiz show, you'll never get to use knowledge.
You'll never win that $1 million.
Yeah.
Those are good examples. And I want to remind us that the way that these distinctions are labeled, we have inert information versus activated
Right.
ignorance and activated knowledge, or inert information versus activated knowledge. So in terms of inert information, the idea is that we don't really have, you were broaching that, right? We have the information that in some cases, the information could actually be useful, but we don't actually use it. So that's one form of inert information. So it doesn't become knowledge for us because we don't know it deeply, and therefore, because to know something is to act upon it, is the idea. If you really have the knowledge, it's like when people say, I know that I shouldn't smoke, but I smoke anyway. You don't really know that you shouldn't smoke.
Yeah.
To know it is to act upon it.
Yeah, at least to accept it deeply so that it affects your behavior in some major way. That's right. It's yeah, you can kind of,
even if it's just causing cognitive dissonance.
right. Yeah.
It's got to do something. It's got to make you feel uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, you can kind of, there's a way in which I think you can kind of know something with one part of your brain or one part of your mind, and you just never let it connect to other parts of your mind, like the ones about actually smoking or not. And it can sit in there kind of as a fact. Yes, cigarette smoking causes cancer. And so I think you're right that it doesn't count as knowledge.